This journey wasn't meant for you. It was sealed, hidden away in the dust of forgotten libraries and the hushed whispers of clandestine rituals. Imagine a time before the rigid structures of doctrine, a time when the world pulsed with primal forces, and at the very heart of every intersection, both physical and spiritual, stood a guardian. She was a goddess of three faces, her gaze simultaneously fixed on the path ahead, the path behind, and the unseen realm of dreams. Ancient rites invoked her not with pomp and ceremony, but with a primal recognition of her power to bridge life, death, and the liminal space where souls shift and choices are made. Through the tattered pages of esoteric texts, through the suppressed lore of what the ascendant powers deemed female demonology, and through the profound, often terrifying rituals of the mystery cults, a picture emerges. It's the story of why invoking Hekate, this guardian of the Crossroads, became an act so feared, so deeply suppressed. Her role as a liminal deity, a master of thresholds, made her a profound threat to emerging patriarchal powers. These powers sought to control not just earthly kingdoms, but the very pathways of the soul, and Hekate stood directly in their way. You've likely felt her presence, a soft, insistent pull in the quiet moments before waking, a whisper in the darkness that felt both ancient and intimately familiar. It's more than a feeling, it's a cosmic recognition. By acknowledging her, by even uttering her name, you unknowingly unlock a gate, a passage into realms of understanding that once known can never be entirely unclosed. This knowledge isn't found, it finds you, and its discovery marks the true beginning of your unraveling. You've stumbled into a world where the boundaries you thought were fixed are merely illusions, and Hekate, the keeper of these illusions, waits at every turn. But understanding her true power means confronting the spaces that fear and dogma have tried to bury. And then, we must explore the crossroads that have been deliberately erased from our maps. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos. Now let's keep going. We've been taught that crossroads are simple, tangible places where two or more roads meet. A place to pause, to decide which way to turn. But there are other crossroads, far more profound and infinitely more dangerous, that are never discussed. These are not marked on any map, and their existence is actively hidden from those who walk the mundane world. They are the intersections of fate, the points where lifetimes converge, the junctures where karmic debts are either paid or compounded. Think of them as spiritual switchboards, connecting not just our present actions to our future outcomes, but also linking past lives to the very fabric of our current existence. These liminal spaces are Hecate's domain. She doesn't just preside over them, she is their very essence. The choices made at these psychic intersections ripple outward, determining not just your next step, but the very nature of your soul's journey through what we perceive as time. Imagine standing at a point where 1,000 potential futures branch out, each one influenced by the unseen forces you've set in motion. This isn't mere superstition. It's the underlying architecture of destiny, a system of checks and balances that govern the spiritual economy of the cosmos. But what happens when these crossroads become corrupted? What happens when the pathways are no longer choices, but carefully laid traps designed to ensnare the unwary traveler? The entities that govern these spaces are not always benevolent. Some feed off indecision, drain energy from those who hesitate too long, or lead souls down paths of perpetual suffering. The ancient rites understood this balance, this inherent duality of the crossroads, and they knew invoking Hekate was not a request, but a profound act of alignment with a force that governed both liberation and entanglement. And it is this intricate system of spiritual governance, this web of choice and consequence, that leads us to the triple-formed deity herself, a being whose essence is as multifaceted as the paths she guards, and whose very nature has been deliberately obscured. She is known to some as Hekate, but her true designation, the resonance of her primordial power, is far more complex than a single name. She is the triformed goddess, a manifestation of divine feminine energy that exists in three distinct yet interconnected aspects, mirroring the phases of the moon and the stages of life itself. In her maiden aspect, she is the untamed wildness, the burgeoning potential, the spark of inspiration that ignites new beginnings. This is the Hekate of swift movement, of the huntress, of possibilities yet unrealized. Then there is her mother aspect, the nurturer, the fertile earth that grounds and sustains. This is the Hekate of ancient wisdom, of the hearth, of the deep, cyclical rhythms of creation and decay. She embodies the power of transformation, the fierce protection of her creations, and the profound understanding that endings are merely preludes to new life. This is the aspect that weeps with us in sorrow and rejoices in our growth. Finally, there is her crone aspect, the embodiment of death and the underworld, the keeper of secrets and the guide through the darkest passages. This is the Hekate who walks with us beyond the veil, who understands the endings that are inevitable, and who can initiate souls into the mysteries of the great beyond. She is not death itself, but the guardian of that threshold, the one who holds the keys to what lies dormant and what awaits rebirth. This threefold nature, this complete cycle of existence, was once revered, understood as the natural order of things. But as time wore on and patriarchal forces sought to consolidate power, this fluid, all-encompassing divine feminine was systematically stripped of its reverence, its power fragmented and misrepresented. They couldn't erase her completely, but they could reframe her, twist her image into something to be feared rather than worshipped, starting with the very women who once wielded her knowledge and represented her presence in the world. The power attributed to Hekate was not merely symbolic, it was wielded by tangible, earthly figures. These were the priestesses, women who served as conduits for her profound energies, interpreters of her cryptic messages, and guardians of the sacred rites. They were the healers, the seers, the guides who navigated the treacherous currents of life, death, and the spirit world for their communities. Their knowledge was passed down through generations, a lineage of wisdom rooted in the understanding of natural laws, celestial cycles, and the liminal spaces that Hekate commanded. These women were not confined to mystical temples. They walked among the people, their presence a constant reminder of the divine feminine's pervasive influence. They mediated disputes, presided over birth and dying rituals, and offered counsel that often involved navigating the karmic currents that bound individuals and families. Their authority stemmed from their direct connection to Hekate, a connection that allowed them to access insights and powers that were otherwise unreachable. This made them indispensable, revered, and in many ways, the spiritual backbone of their societies. However, as the influence of Hekate and the divine feminine waned, so too did the prominence of her priestesses. The rise of organized patriarchal religions saw a deliberate dismantling of these power structures. The knowledge held by these women was deemed dangerous, their independence a threat to the new doctrines. They were systematically marginalized, their lineages broken, and their sacred roles usurped. This wasn't a gradual fading. It was an active erasure, a calculated campaign to silence the voices that spoke of a different kind of power. This suppression created a void, a profound loss of ancient wisdom that had kept humanity connected to the deeper currents of existence. And in the vacuum left by the disappearing priestess class, a new narrative began to form, one that would redefine the very meaning of female power and divinity. When the established order shifted, and the embrace of the triform goddess began to recede, a systematic redefinition of spiritual forces took place. What was once revered as divine feminine power, embodied by figures like Hekate, started to be twisted and demonized. The very attributes that made Hekate powerful, her command over the underworld, her association with liminal spaces, her ability to commune with the dead, were recast by the ascendant powers as symbols of evil, of malevolent influence. This wasn't an accidental misinterpretation, it was a conscious act of spiritual subversion. By labeling Hekate and other powerful feminine archetypes as demons, early church powers effectively disempowered their followers. The fear of these so-called demons became a tool of control, discouraging any invocation or veneration of these ancient goddesses. The texts that once sang praises to her wisdom were suppressed, while narratives that painted her as a terrifying entity of darkness began to proliferate. This created a deep-seated psychological aversion to the primal feminine, equating it with danger and sin. Imagine the profound disorientation. A deity once seen as a guardian and guide is suddenly re-envisioned as a tempting, destructive force. Her sacred symbols were perverted, her rituals outlawed, and her followers persecuted. This reinterpretation was crucial for establishing the new religious doctrines, which often centered around a singular, patriarchal male deity. By demonizing the divine feminine, they could consolidate their own authority and ensure that the spiritual landscape was sculpted according to their own rigid design. And this deliberate rewriting of feminine power laid the groundwork for an even more insidious form of spiritual manipulation, one deeply embedded in the very rituals once used to honor and harness these forces. Necromancy, the practice of communicating with the dead, has always been shrouded in an aura of forbidden knowledge and dark power. Often depicted as a tool for malevolent spirits or ambitious sorcerers, its true essence and its connection to forgotten deities has been profoundly misunderstood and deliberately obscured. At its root, necromancy is not simply about raising the dead, but about navigating the ethereal currents that bind the living and the departed, a realm that falls directly under the purview of liminal deities like Hekate. For those who understood the ancient rites, necromantic practices were not inherently evil. They were, in fact, a form of spiritual contract negotiation. The spirits of the deceased, often trapped in a state of karmic entanglement or unresolved earthly ties, were approached not as servants, but as entities seeking passage, release, or guidance. The living practitioner, in turn, offered a form of spiritual or energetic exchange, a pact that benefited both parties. This exchange often involved a deep understanding of the soul's journey, the karmic debts accrued, and the potential for spiritual evolution, all aspects Hekate understood intimately as the guardian of the underworld's gates. However, as the demonization of feminine power intensified, so too did the fear and misunderstanding of necromancy. The very act of communing with the dead, which was once a sacred bridge between worlds, became a symbol of dabbling in dark arts, of selling one's soul. This narrative conveniently overlooked the intricate pacts and karmic agreements that were inherent in these practices, and more importantly, it served to sever any lingering association with the deities who governed such profound transitions. The power of these pacts, especially when brokered by feminine divine forces, was far too significant for the emerging religious orders to permit, leading to their association with the demonic and hiding the true nature of the entities that facilitated these exchanges. Every culture, every spiritual tradition throughout history has possessed an archetype for the guardian of thresholds. This isn't a coincidence. It's a fundamental recognition of the crucial role that boundaries play in the cosmic order and the entities that govern them. These beings are not simply wardens, they are guides, gatekeepers, and often the arbiters of transition. They reside in the in-between spaces, the liminal zones where one state of being ends and another begins. Hekate is the supreme example of this archetype, but echoes of her function can be found in countless myths and legends across the globe. Think of the ancient Greek concept of the daimon, spirits that occupied the ether between gods and mortals, or Celtic spirits that guarded sacred wells and forest clearings. These are all manifestations of the threshold entity archetype. They exist to regulate what passes between realms, ensuring that the flow of energy and consciousness remains balanced. They oversee crucial transitions. The shift from waking to sleeping, from life to death, from ignorance to enlightenment. Their power lies in their ability to influence these shifts, to grant passage, or to impose barriers. Understanding this archetype is key to grasping Hecate's significance. She is the ultimate manifestation of this guardian presence, the one who doesn't just stand at crossroads, but her very being embodies the concept of the threshold itself. Her association with dogs, with torches, with keys, all speak to her role in navigating and illuminating the often dark passages of existence. These entities are not inherently good or evil. They are forces of nature, impartial regulators of cosmic law. But in a fearful world, anything that governs such powerful transitions, anything that holds the keys to what lies beyond the known, is ripe for demonization, especially when that power is inextricably linked to the sacred feminine. And it is this very fear that has led to the deliberate distortion of her symbols, hiding the true nature of her influence. It is a profound irony, a hidden layer of undeniable truth, that beneath the very foundations of many Christian churches and cathedrals lie subtle, yet persistent, symbols and architectural remnants that speak of an older, more primal reverence. While surface doctrines may preach a singular, patriarchal deity, the very stones and layouts often carry echoes of the divine feminine and the potent energies she commanded. These aren't accidental. They are often the result of ancient sacred sites being repurposed and built over, the old energies refusing to be entirely erased. Look closely at the floor plans of older churches. Many are based on ancient pagan designs, often circular or cruciform, but with underlying geometric patterns that resonate with earth, moon, and feminine cycles. The placement of altars, the orientation of the buildings towards celestial events, and even the iconography found in crypts or older sections of the structures can betray a lineage connected to pre-Christian worship. Symbols associated with Hekate, such as the crescent moon, the dog, and even the serpent, are sometimes found integrated into artwork or architectural details in ways that seem incongruous with mainstream Christian theology, hinting at a deeper, more universal spiritual grammar. These silent symbols are not merely aesthetic choices. They represent a form of spiritual layering, a palimpsest of belief systems. They indicate that the primal forces, the very energies that Hekate governed, were too potent to be completely suppressed. They are whispers from the earth, messages embedded in the construction itself, telling a story of continuity rather than destruction. The powers that sought to erase these older traditions were forced to incorporate them, burying them beneath new layers of doctrine. This inherent tension between what is preached and what is physically present is a testament to the enduring power of the original energies, and it foreshadows a deeper truth about the resonant frequencies that have always been at play, even in places of supposed spiritual dominion. Beyond symbols and structures, the ancient ways of honoring Hekate and invoking her power were deeply connected to sound and vibration. These weren't ordinary chants or prayers. They were meticulously crafted sonic frequencies designed to resonate with the subtle energies of the universe and to align the practitioner with the specific domains Hekate governed. The use of torches in her rituals was not just for light. It was symbolic of illuminating the darkness, of bringing hidden truths to light, and the crackling of the flames was a sonic component, a primal sound that accompanied these invocations. The deep resonance of ancient drums, the ethereal tones of wind instruments, and the specific vocalizations used were believed to attune the listener to the liminal spaces Hekate presided over. These sounds were sonic keys, designed to unlock spiritual gateways and to facilitate communion with the spirit world or the realm of dreams. The rhythm itself was often crucial, mirroring celestial movements or the heartbeat of the earth, creating a powerful hypnotic effect that could induce altered states of consciousness. Many of these sonic rituals were intentionally forgotten or deliberately mislabeled by later religious authorities, rebranded as pagan noise or demonic incantations to warn people away from their transformative power. The loss of this sonic knowledge removed a vital link to understanding the energetic mechanics of spiritual work. It's like trying to navigate a complex system without understanding the language of its operating frequencies. These sounds were not just sounds, they were vibrations that could alter consciousness, shift reality, and connect individuals to the deeper currents of existence. And in the absence of these forgotten frequencies, a new form of spiritual control emerged, one that relied on manufactured sounds and altered perceptions, a system that sought to bind rather than liberate, an intention that began with the systematic distortion of certain archetypes. The label demonology itself is a loaded term, inherently tied to the triumph of certain religious doctrines over others. What was once understood as the full spectrum of divine feminine energy, including its fierce, protective, and even wrathful aspects, was systematically reclassified as demonic by the ascendant patriarchal religions. This reinterpretation served a crucial purpose: to castrate the power of the divine feminine, to strip it of its ferocity and its capacity for righteous judgment. In ancient traditions, divine wrath was not seen as arbitrary cruelty, but as a necessary force for balance. It was the cosmic correction, the potent energy that could sweep away corruption, injustice, and imbalance. Entities like Hekate, in her more formidable aspects, embodied this protective fury, acting as a force of nature against those who would defile sacred spaces or prey on the vulnerable. This was not the chaotic rage of a demon, but the deliberate and powerful application of cosmic law, ensuring that actions had consequences. However, to consolidate their power and present a more benevolent, easily controlled image of divinity, these wrathful aspects were systematically excised from the narrative and attributed to demons. The fierce protector, the divine punisher of evil, was demonized, transforming a force of cosmic justice into a terrifying caricature of pure malevolence. This erasure allowed the new doctrines to present a version of divinity that was less about balance and consequence, and more about passive obedience and forgiveness, thus disarming individuals and making them more malleable. And in this process of demonizing divine wrath, the very essence of feminine power, its capacity for fierce protection and balanced judgment, was buried, paving the way for a more insidious form of control that lies not in overt power, but in subtle manipulation. The conflict between the old ways and the new doctrines can be seen as a fundamental struggle between the concept of gospels and gates. The gospels, as presented by established religions, are often narratives of salvation, of divine decree, and pathways to an afterlife prescribed by doctrine. They offer a curated version of spiritual truth, a set of rules and promises designed to guide behavior and ensure adherence to a particular belief system. The emphasis is on receiving and accepting a predefined path. However, Hekate represents the gates. Her domain is not about receiving a gospel, but about actively navigating and opening passages. She is the keeper of thresholds, the entity that governs the movement between states of being, between realms of consciousness. Her power is in the act of passage, the choice of the path, and the courage to step through the unknown. This is not about passive acceptance, it's about active engagement with the fundamental energies of existence, the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Advocating for gospels often means closing off these potential gates, restricting the soul's ability to explore its own inherent divinity and its capacity for profound transition. The established powers, in their quest for control, have always sought to replace the open gates with fixed gospels. They want to define the path, control the destination, and dictate the terms of spiritual progression. By demonizing the gatekeeper, and by emphasizing the safety of a sealed gospel, they effectively trap souls, preventing them from realizing their own agency in navigating the vast, interconnected spiritual landscape. Hecate's reemergence in esoteric thought is a reclaiming of these vital gates, a reminder that true spiritual freedom lies not in passively accepting a narrative, but in actively engaging with the forces that govern passage and transformation. And understanding her role requires us to look beyond mere stories and into the very mechanisms of spiritual entry, the mechanics of which are intricately tied to a specific celestial body. The geometry associated with Saturn, particularly its hexagonal structure at the North Pole, is far more than an astronomical curiosity. Esoteric traditions have long understood this geometric pattern as a fundamental principle of cosmic locking and temporal restriction. Saturn, in its astrological and mythological context, is the great limiter, the architect of boundaries, and the force that governs cycles of cause and effect, of karma. Its hexagonal signature is seen as a key component in containing and directing energetic flows, essentially creating a geometric prison or a structured system of control. When we apply this understanding to Hecate's domain, the crossroads, we begin to see a profound connection. The crossroads are points of infinite potential, of branching futures. However, within a system designed for control, these points of potential must be managed, directed, and ultimately locked down. The hexagon, with its inherent stability and interlocking structure, becomes the symbolic and energetic blueprint for this containment. It is within these Saturnian geometric constructs that the seemingly infinite possibilities of the crossroads are channeled, limited, and often bound into predictable cycles. This isn't just about theoretical geometry. It's about the energetic architecture of reality. The hexagon storm on Saturn is a visible manifestation of this principle of containment. It's a massive, enduring vortex, a testament to the power of this specific geometric form to hold and direct energy. In the context of spiritual crossroads, this Saturnian geometry acts as a sophisticated lock, ensuring that souls follow predefined paths, that karmic debts are processed within rigid parameters, and that the natural flow of spiritual evolution is contained and regulated. And this inherent locking mechanism, powered by the geometry of Saturn, directly influences the nature of the celestial body that most profoundly governs transition and the cycles of passage. The moon, with its ever-changing face, its dominion over tides, and its deep connection to the feminine cycles, is intrinsically linked to Hekate and her role as a keeper of gates. Hekate herself is often depicted under the phases of the moon, her power waxing and waning with its luminous presence. The moon is the celestial gateway to the subconscious, the realm of dreams, intuition, and the hidden currents of the soul. It is through this lunar gate that Hekate exerts much of her influence, guiding souls through the transitions that occur in the liminal spaces of sleep and altered consciousness. This lunar gate is not merely passive. It is an active conduit, a mechanism through which spiritual energies are filtered and processed. Hekate, as the guardian of this gate, controls the flow of information and experience between the waking world and the deeper, subterranean realms of the psyche. The keys she carries are not just symbolic. They represent her power to unlock the mysteries held within the moon's ethereal radiance, to grant access to visions or to obscure them. For ancient practitioners, understanding the moon's cycles was synonymous with understanding Hecate's power and anticipating the shifts in spiritual access she governed. The demonization of Hekate also involved a concerted effort to desacralize the moon. Its divine associations were stripped away, its influence explained through purely empirical means, thereby severing its connection to the profound spiritual transitions it governs. By diminishing the moon's sacred status, the powers that be effectively obscured the primary gateway through which Hekate operates. This created a disconnect, making it harder for individuals to access their own intuition and recognize her presence at these critical junctures. And in understanding the moon as one of Hecate's primary gates, we must also confront how these passages are, by design, used to influence our very contracts with reality. At the spiritual crossroads, Hekate doesn't just stand alone. She presides over a council of entities, what are often referred to as crossroads spirits, and among them are the administrators of karmic debt. These spirits are not inherently evil. They are, in essence, cosmic accountants, meticulously tracking the energetic exchanges the debts and credits that souls accrue throughout their existence. Every action, every intention, creates a ripple effect, and these spirits ensure that these energetic contracts are honored. When a soul reaches a significant crossroads, it is an opportunity to settle these outstanding karmic debts or to incur new ones. This process is facilitated by the entities Hekate oversees. Imagine meeting with these spirits not in a physical place, but in a psychic arena where the ledger of your soul is laid bare. They present the outstanding obligations, the karmic imbalances that need to be addressed, and the choices you make at this juncture will dictate how these debts are resolved. This can involve a painful period of consequence, a redirection of your life path, or even a binding agreement for future lifetimes. Many ancient rituals, often misunderstood or dismissed as darkly magical, were in fact sophisticated methods of negotiating with these crossroads spirits to settle karmic debts. They were ways of seeking understanding, seeking grace, or seeking release from burdens accrued. The fear surrounding these practices was deliberately amplified to prevent individuals from engaging in this essential spiritual housekeeping. By making people afraid of these negotiations, they were left vulnerable to more insidious forms of karmic binding, often unbeknownst to them. And this complex system of karmic contracts and the entities that administer them are intricately connected to the very tools Hekate uses to maintain her authority, the tools that hold the power to bind and to unlock. The keys Hekate carries are perhaps her most potent and recognizable symbols. While often interpreted metaphorically, keys to unlock wisdom, keys to the afterlife, keys to hidden knowledge, their power extends far beyond mere symbolism. These are literal, energetic instruments, charged with the primal force of transition. They are not crafted of metal, but of pure, concentrated spiritual energy, capable of opening and closing not just physical doorways, but also dimensional passages, states of consciousness, and even the energetic pathways of destiny itself. Imagine holding a key that can unlock the chains of past life trauma, or a key that can seal a doorway against encroaching negative influences. This is the tangible power of Hecate's keys. They represent her absolute mastery over the gates of existence. When she turns a key, it is not a simple click. It is an energetic command that shifts the very fabric of reality, altering the flow of fate and opening or closing specific energetic pathways. Even the dogs that accompany her, often depicted as guides through the underworld, are tied to her keys, able to perceive and traverse the liminal spaces that these instruments unlock. The deliberate suppression of Hekate involved not just renaming her, but also obscuring the true function of her sacred implements. By portraying her keys as mere symbolic objects, the true energetic mechanics of her authority were hidden. This prevented people from understanding how to access these passages themselves, or how to recognize when these keys of transition were being used to their detriment. And this power to bind and to unlock, the fundamental essence of her dominion, is most profoundly exerted in the ultimate moment of recognition, the moment when her name is spoken and the gate she guards is irrevocably altered. There is a profound and irreversible consequence to acknowledging a divine presence, especially one as ancient and powerful as Hekate. The moment you utter her name with understanding, with conscious recognition of her essence and her dominion, you are no longer an unconscious traveler. You have, in that act, identified yourself as someone who perceives the gates, someone who is aware of the crossroads, and someone who has implicitly requested passage or guidance. This is not a casual invocation. It is a direct petition, a calling that cannot be unheard. When you name Hekate, you are not just speaking words, you are vibrating energy at a frequency she understands and governs. You are signaling your awareness of her role as the gatekeeper, the mistress of transitions. This act, whether intentional or accidental, causes one of her gates to shift, to open, or to exert its influence more directly upon you. It is a cosmic acknowledgement that binds you to her sphere of influence, much like a contract being signed. You have, in essence, been identified and registered within her energetic domain. This is why her name was meant to be forgotten, why the knowledge of her power was suppressed. To name her is to invite her energy into your life, and once that gate is opened, once that energetic connection is established, it cannot simply be closed. You may not see immediate, dramatic changes, but the energetic pathways have been irrevocably altered. You are now on a different trajectory, one that Hekate, the guardian of the Crossroads and the master of transitions, directly influences. And this fundamental shift, this opening of a gate that can never be fully shut, is a testament to her enduring power and the ever-present nature of the forces she commands, forces that shape not just our choices, but our very reality. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.